I'm a consultant in children's emergency medicine in Manchester, and I was made a Churchill Fellow in 2014. And what I want to do is to tell you about a journey that has really been the most exciting journey of my career so far. It's a journey that's given me increased confidence in work, a journey that's already started to have an impact on my colleagues and the communities that we serve. And it's a journey that took me 35,043 miles away from home to 9 different cities in 6 different countries. And that resulted in the publication that Jamie showed you earlier of Living in a Railway Line. That is a publication that contains 10 key recommendations for the UK, with some international recommendations as well. Now, what has happened since that was produced? Well, it was launched at an event at Media City UK, organised by the University of Salford in October 2014. And since then, there have been a number of follow-up events with different NHS trusts, a youth council, a seminar that I co-hosted with a Member of Parliament to do with child sexual exploitation and improving the situation for children in the Greater Manchester region. There have been partnerships developed both internationally and locally, and there are projects that are planned for the future. Now, on a journey that took me to Texas, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Singapore, Malaysia and Cambodia, it was this photograph here that I took when I was undertaking a mobile health clinic in Chinookville, southern Cambodia, that inspired the name of my report. Because there are some children in the world who are physically living on a railway line, as they are in this photograph. But there are other children who are metaphorically living on a railway line, never really sure where the next insult to their physical or emotional integrity is going to come from. Now, I only have time to highlight a few of the things that I've found and the recommendations that I've made in my report. So I've picked 2 key areas to do that. The first one of these is legislative change. The second one is about community engagement. And everything that I've recommended is in the report that is on the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust website, although there are only a few printed copies. Now, what about a legislative change? Well, what I've looked at particularly is the impact of mandatory reporting of child abuse and what we should do here in the UK, or what I think we should do here in the UK. Because abuse of children is not something that is a modern occurrence. So as far back as Roman times, children were considered to be items of personal property that their fathers could sell, abandon or maltreat. And we know that right back in 1874 in the United States, there was a young girl called Mary Ellen who set about the formation, because of what had happened to her, of the Society for the Prevention for Cruelty to Children. But we also know here in the UK that all across the UK, children are being abused, neglected and exploited by families and communities that ought to be looking after them. We know that the NSPCC have found that 20% of children have been severely maltreated by a parent or guardian at some point in their lives, and 1 in 20 children will suffer from some form of contact sexual abuse. Now, each year, I work in an emergency department, and each year of those children who are physically abused, over 250,000 are injured in the UK. And almost 75,000 of those require medical attention. About 3,000 of those are injured severely enough to need to come to an emergency department. In fact, we've looked at some work and that's shown that about 1 in 11 children who come to emergency departments has suffered from some form of abuse. Now, I've looked at the impact of mandatory reporting of abuse that they have in the United States, and I visited the Child Protection Center in Colorado, which was the first child protection center really to be set up when Henry Kemp wrote the first paper about child abuse in the 1960s. And what I've concluded, looking at the situation in the United States, is that we should have a law change here in the UK, that we should introduce mandatory reporting of child abuse. And such a signal, I think, would have the effect of empowering victims to come forwards when they might otherwise not have done. It might encourage members of the community to be more vigilant to spot cases of abuse at an earlier stage. And in time, I think it would have a preventative effect to reduce the number of cases of abuse that can occur. Unfortunately, my fellowship and the timing of it seems to have come at a time where you can't open a newspaper, turn on the television, or look at any internet story without there being something about child sexual exploitation or child abuse of any kind. And I think that this new law is required in the UK. My report was launched on the 20th of October. And the week after that, Lord Bates in the House of Lords announced that there will be a government consultation on mandatory reporting. Now, I can't claim any credit for that. It is timely. And I know that in terms of dissemination of reports, that my report has already been sent to the Home Secretary by an MP who I didn't even know anything about. So that MP has got that report from some other mechanism other than me. And that my own MP has also written to the Home Secretary to put forward the evidence that's in my report. I never imagined that would be possible before I went away on a fellowship. I wouldn't have imagined that somebody would actually listen to the conclusions that I came up with. But they will. And the reports that you come up with yourselves, the recommendations that you make, will be listened to by people. And if you can get that message out through Helen and the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, people will believe what you say, and people will act upon your recommendations if you get them to the right people. And it's really important that those recommendations are got to the right people, because, as Albert Einstein said, the world is in greater peril from those who tolerate or encourage evil than for those who actually commit it. But it wasn't just mandatory reporting that I looked at. We have in the UK, in our Sexual Offences Act, some terms, child prostitute and child prostitution. They're antiquated, old-fashioned terms that have no place in modern society. And I've seen hundreds of examples of children who have been sexually exploited when I've been away on my travels. And I'll talk about one organisation right at the end that's been looking after 3,000 children and families who are in an exploitative situation in Cambodia. To call children who are involved in this activity prostitutes, or to say that they're involved in child prostitution, is degrading and doesn't really show that they're actually victims of really serious child sexual assault and exploitation. Since I wrote my report, an MP, Anne Coffey, has managed to secure amendments to legislation that will remove these terms from UK legislation. Now, again, I can't take the credit for that, but the recommendation that I've come up with and the seminar that I ran with Anne Coffey after I came back came about because of this report. Anne wrote a report at a similar time to me, and we realised that we were concluding almost identical things in key areas, but we had no idea that each of us were writing separate reports. The benefit of sharing knowledge through the Churchill Fellowship can really have an impact to people that you wouldn't even know it would have an impact before you set off. And I've concluded things about legislative change to do with physical punishment of children. When I was in Texas, finding that school children are allowed to be beaten by the school principal using a wooden board 75 centimetres long, 7 centimetres deep, and half a centimetre thick. And they're allowed to beat children 3 times if they misbehave in school. And over 30,000 children are beaten in that way in Texas each year. Looking at the effects of that, and looking particularly in Arizona, when I was in Phoenix, at the effects of physical punishment on children and the research that they have shown that it really doesn't do them any good, has led me to conclude that we need to change the law here in the UK as well. Because it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. But protecting children is really everyone's business, including everybody sat in this room, and that's why it's really important that the fellowship conclusions, whatever topic that you are covering, is disseminated, in my particular case, because everybody has a responsibility for this. So what about community engagement? Well, if you're living in this situation here, and this is where you get your food, and this is your local shop, your community has a real role to play in protecting you from exploitative situations that you would otherwise get into. Or in this particular case, that really is just 1.5 meters away from that train track. Really particularly dangerous situations for children. What I found through the work that I did in the United States, and they have a Child Abuse Prevention Month in April each year, and the work that I've done in Cambodia with an organisation that subscribes to a theme called Child Safe, is that we should have here in the UK a pilot Child Abuse Awareness Month, and that should start as soon as possible after the 2015 general election. Now, the child-safe model that I've seen is something that after the seminar I ran with an MP, a charity has come forward to say that they would like to be one of the first charities in the UK to try and sign up to the child-safe model and to get accreditation to promote those values. And promoting those values and teaching people is really important, because it's only through that kind of education that we can really change the world around us. And I want you to believe, for those of you that haven't been on your travels, that you really will make a difference. You really will be able to make a difference that will change people around you. It will change you as a person. It will change your colleagues. But people will listen to what you have to say, and that the projects that you will do will have a real difference to the communities that you are aiming them at.
Hello, my name is Saran. I am the director of Blogbang. It was a busy year 2014. We are working on our annual report now. It should be ready to send lots of detail and numbers soon. In the meantime, I would like to show you some of the highlights from 2014. On behalf of all the children and all the staff at Blogbang, I want to say thank you very much for all your support.
When you go on your fellowship, my final thing to say is that no matter what anybody tells you, your ideas, your words, they really can change the world. Because, as Winston Churchill said, what is the use of living if it be not to make this muddled world a better place for those who will live in it after we're gone? Thank you very much.